introductions. I'm Lucy, I'm the chair of Student Council, which means that part of my job is also chairing these hustings. So just a quick running order of the agenda. I mean, you can see it on the screen, but we're starting off with Widening Participation Officer, then Environment and Ethics, Women's Officer, Education Officer, and Sports Officer. This is being recorded, and also for accessibility purposes, captions should be on for students to process what we're saying. And just a quick note for those of you that are speaking, please don't be alarmed if the script is slightly off under the captions, just focus on your own speech. People should also be able to put captions on for themselves live, I think. And also the hashtag for this evening is #SpringElections 2021 to keep running commentary of the event on social media, so Twitter, Facebook, etc. Just a quick note about if you want to speak tonight, you can raise your hand and I'll select you to answer if you want to ask a question, or you can message me privately if you'd prefer. I've had quite a lot of questions sent in advance via a Google Doc, so I'm going to prioritise those, but if anybody has anything else that they would want to ask, then just pop your hand up. Candidates will each get 2 minutes to speak, and then we'll answer questions from the Google Doc and the audience members. And 1 minute 30 seconds after you raise your hand, I will inform them that you have 30 seconds left. And yeah, then we'll be doing a mic test for each candidate as well, just to make sure that everybody's mics are working and everything. Just quickly, I want to refer to the safe space policy. I think Yaz is going to show the document quickly.
Give me 1 second, sorry.
Okay. So it's basically just a reminder that we want to keep all of our SU events a safe space for everybody. No bullying or harassment will be supported, no homophobia, racism, sexism. Basically just be respectful, and we want to keep this event as comfortable and good for everybody as possible. Okay, I think that's that.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, Luce, go on.
Okay, so I think we're starting off with Widening Participation Officer. I think that's the first position. If just move the slide on. So we've got 2 candidates for Widening Participation Officer, Brady Atkins and Kieran Warren. So I guess I'll invite Brady to do their speech first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Good. Tell me when I can begin and I'll just start.
Go for it whenever you're ready.
So hi, I'm Brady. I'm a second-year PACE student, and I think you should vote for me as your next Widening Participation Officer. My strengths lie in my knowledge, my experience and my commitment, whereby ending educational inequality and representing young people's views are central in everything I do, whether that be mentoring within university, taking a year out to help school my younger brother, being an SSLC rep, or working as an SU democracy assistant. Coming from a background of council housing, free school meals and being raised by a single mum on benefits, not to mention really struggling with my own mental health at Warwick, it means that I'm all too aware of the gaps in university support. Warwick is not a level playing field. I will do everything I can to change this. First, I will fight for more of us at Warwick by lobbying an increase in contextual offers and having widening participation, student ambassadors on open days. Second, our voices need to be heard, and so I will ensure representation in all departments, actively campaign against classism on campus, and create a forum for us to share advice and support. Third, our wellbeing is paramount, so I will lobby for an increase in bursaries, initiate masterclasses by the wellbeing services, and create a transitioning mentoring programme where freshers are paired with older students. Lastly, I promise increased career support, whether that be LinkedIn sessions, interview coaching, targeted webinars, or help getting into the creative industries. As a struggling fresher back in 2018, I would have been happy with a smiley face on the SU website. Now that we have a widening participation officer at Warwick, I know how much this role can do for students. During a time when it feels like the university's pocket is worth more than supporting us, it is more than ever important to hold the university account for its inadequacies. I'm dedicated to fulfilling my pledges and listening to you to implement real change and ensure Warwick is welcoming and accessible to all. We deserve so much better. Vote Brady for WPO and I'll fight for no less. Thank you.
Very much. Oh, sorry, I've got a timer on my phone if you hear it. Could I invite the next candidate to do their speech?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, can you hear me properly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay then. Right, hi everyone, I'm Kieran and I'm running to be an ex-WP officer as part of Education Not Exploitation. Since 2018, I've been a mentor for the Warwick Sutton Scholars WP programme. I currently sit on the SU Environmental Committee, as well as holding previous positions on the Democracy Exec and as Social Secretary for the Warwick Labour Society. In terms of my own widening participation journey, I'm the first in my family to go to university, and I also attended the Sutton Trust Summer School in sixth form here at Warwick in 2017, and I was briefly a young carer for my father in secondary. I believe that every WP student has their own unique pathway and story into and within a higher education, and I want to have a collaborative and democratic approach to the role, helping empower others and draw upon the strength of the WP community. In the midst of this pandemic, educational divides and inequalities have been exacerbated to detrimental levels. WP schemes and support has been more difficult to deliver, threatening the chances of widening participation students being able to fulfill their potential within higher education. On campus and within society, structural racism continues to dominate, as well as elitism and classism. If elected as WP officer, I would work to ensure that greater support and empowerment is developed for incoming and current WP students in Warwick. This through the creation and promotion of a WP buddy scheme between freshers and older students, as well as pushing for the creation of WP tailored skills programs, which can help incoming students further their academic skills and help them catch up from the disruption caused by the pandemic within their A levels. In addition, I would like to oversee more WP tailored career programs focused on internships and helping personal career development, the creation of departmental forums to scrutinise WP departmental strategies and promote WP awareness, working with the Ethnic Minorities Officer to work on collaborative campaigns on intersectionality, and the creation of a Young Carers Forum. If you'd like to see my full manifesto, you can go to warwicksu.com in the candidates list. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We didn't have any questions sent in for widening participation officer, so if anybody here has any, please feel free to put your hand up. I can see two questions, so can I ask Fatima to go first, please?
Thank you. Thank you to both candidates first for your speeches. I'm Fatima, I'm the current widening participation co-officer. My first question is, what specific approach would you take for implementing your manifestos in and outside of the SU?
Thank you, and we'll have Kieran to answer first, please.
Yeah, so in terms of the approach, I want to be collaborative and democratic in how going about things and implementing these schemes. I know that you have set up the Widening Participation Advisory Group, which is a great initiative. And from that, I really want that to become an autonomous group wherein they can, all the widening participation students within that would be able to propose things, put campaigns forward, and to give the resources to other groups as well through the departmental forums. So very much, like I said, I think everyone has different experiences within WP. And because of that, it's very important that it's a level playing field for everyone to be able to input and for everyone to be empowered within it. So essentially collaborative. It wouldn't be top down. It would be a sense of creating groups, giving them the resources, giving them the space and resources to be able to go forward.
Yes, with me, similar to what Kieran was saying, it's nice that we have this representation now, but just having someone in a role acting as a representative isn't really good enough. It needs to be on all levels, and in all things, whether that's social media campaigns, whether that's forums, whether that's advisory boards, like informal and formal groups and such things like that. I think that's really important. And again, working with other part-time liberation officers to ensure the intersectionality of it, because like your background, class background, income background, education background can intersect with so many different things: your gender, your sexuality, your race, your disabilities, and so on and so forth. And so making sure that it's a level playing field in that aspect, and making sure that it's making sure that it's making sure it's very intersectional and going for all those different channels and stuff like that. Sorry.
Thank you. I can see Axe's hand up next.
Hi everyone, well done again to both candidates for your speeches. I'm also the other co-officer for widening participation alongside Fatima. So my question is, the university already has an established team dedicated to widening participation. Are you aware of the support that's already available? Have you been interacting with this support? And how do you plan to fit all your manifesto points into this pre-existing structure in order to truly tackle the issues of widening participation students?
Should I answer first?
Yeah, we'll have Brady to go first this time.
So yeah, I've been on the Widening Participation Network for the past year and a half. I'm involved in loads of other things, sort of externally to the Widening Participation thing at Warwick, such as being part of Outreach and stuff like that. So I am myself a recipient of all the programs and stuff that happen on campus, but I also know that it's very sort of, if you're aware of it, you're aware of it, but if you're not, there's a lot of people missing within that. And so I feel like it shouldn't be people that are incredibly aware of things and making sure that they're getting involved in all these different things and such. A part of the advisory group and stuff like that. There's a lot of luck in it. So I feel like there needs to be a lot more outreach to these people from the beginning, because I know from myself when I become a fresher, and I'm sure it's a universal experience with many people, the imposter syndrome, struggling with fitting in and stuff. I think it's very important that that's given from the offset. And yeah, what was the second part of your question again? Sorry.
So how do you plan to fit into the pre-existing structure in order to get your manifesto point, to be able to go ahead with them and tackle the issues you want to tackle? The Student Advisory Board, discussing issues with that, because obviously that's a point where we can talk to widening participation students directly, again with the network that's already in place. As well as also talking to, if we have like representatives in all faculties and departments, I think that's really important. I was on the SSLC rep last year for my course, and I ran as a candidate saying I come from a working class background, but there was no specific position from people from widening participation backgrounds. So again, it shouldn't be a case of you wanting to put yourself forward for it. Those things should already be in place. And definitely through my manifesto, ensuring representation and our voices are heard and faces are seen. Hopefully I'm sure I'll fight to make sure that's delivered.
Yes, I just want to agree really with what Brady was saying. I was involved with the WP network. I haven't this year, unfortunately, because I've been on my year abroad, but I was involved around 2019, and my engagement with that was mainly due to just receiving an email in my inbox. I remember going to the first event, and there were students there who were in their final year, just ready to graduate. And in the sense, I remember the room we were in. I remember because Claire, Amanda, and Damien, they were there, giving the presentation. But there was a sense amongst, especially the older students, why hadn't this been introduced earlier? Why wasn't this something in their first year? And I think it really is something down to luck. An email, you looking at an email in your inbox out of so many emails. Yeah, I remember as well. Actually, I met you through the student network, and yeah, I think so. I think it definitely is something to. It is down to kind of luck and chance, and that's something that needs to be expanded. There needs to be a good, dedicated promotion to these different groups. In terms of implementing manifesto commitments within the structures, I think it would be a case of coming into the role, firstly examining the existing structures, and then how to implement the creation of, say, departmental forums, young carer forum, and also the role of the advisory group within that. There would have to be, I guess, some liaising with the existing WP representative there. Sorry
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Okay, we'll go to Alice Chung next, please.
Hi, thanks both. It's been really great to hear your thoughts on this. I was just wondering, although there is a lot of really great people at the university, staff that do great work, for example, the WP network, a lot of the university's approach to widening participation, in particular in their governance, so for example, the widening participation committee, can be really focused on access, so getting widening participation students into uni, and less focused on that kind of experience and participation, what they, what the experience of students are like when they get here. So I was just wondering, what's your take on that balance between access and experience, and how would you kind of approach getting the university to rebalance this, and so they're less focused on upping their numbers of students they consider to be widening participation in actually caring about the student experience? Thanks.
We'll have Kira to go first, please.
So yeah, there is definitely a kind of imbalance there between access and rebalance. I mean, working on the WP Scholars Programme, that's mainly focused on access, catching pupils in secondary school, and obviously that's a great thing. But in terms of kind of experience, I think generally that there needs to be a focus on building up the confidence of WP students, and also trying to get them, encourage them, and give them the skills, I think, as well. Coming to university, I never had a university background from my family. Navigating that application process, but then coming into the university itself, it was very kind of daunting. And then it was people, even just little things people just talking about sort of, they're the family of university, and how they were going to do all these things. And I wasn't really aware of all the different opportunities available. So I think it's definitely about giving these specific programs, especially I think in careers as well, and how to build personal development is an important thing, because I would say people wouldn't have the ability to rely on family connections, on that sort of network if that would be there. And I think it's a case really of having more focus on the experience now, and having these WP specific programs and really promoting it.
So yeah, I think that imbalance is also, I've seen it myself, when I was in year 9, I've got this Dux Award thing, which was, I'm probably saying it wrong, but it's when Warwick brought students from secondary schools and stuff from state educated backgrounds, and that's when I first come to Warwick when I was in year 9, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was like a little snow globe with all the little things and stuff. But when I come here, and I was struggling, and I experienced classism on campus, such as people saying my parents haven't contributed anything to society, weird things like that I've experienced, and just struggling to fit in, and experiencing imposter syndrome. Similar to Kieran, there's no university background in my life. I'm the only person in my family with 1 GCSE to my name, so I think we both come from similar backgrounds and understand that when you come here, it's not a level playing field. And sure, there might be a lot of access in getting here to begin with. So there's loads of like pre-16 school visits and stuff like that at Warwick through looking over like the reports and stuff. But I feel like once you get here, there's no career support. Like I'm in second year. If I wasn't taking a year out to look after my brother, I'd be in my third year, and I've just found out about things like mock interviews and assessment centres, and I would be graduating this year if I wasn't taking that time out. And that's only through organisations like Upreach. So a lot of students, they're not brought into university and told immediately the programmes and the assistance that's in place. And I think that's really important because we're smart people. Everyone that goes to Warwick is incredibly smart to get here. And I feel like it's unfair that you do have to depend on who you know and not what you know. And I feel like, and I think that definitely there should be a lot more support in place for Warwick students from widening participation backgrounds in that sense, whether it's careers, well-being, and just more of us here as well. There might be more of us and more support and getting more people in, but that doesn't always translate into more of our faces on campus. So sometimes the support and access might actually be kind of empty in that respect, where we have loads of events happening, but in terms of our numbers, I think like only 4% of us from the most deprived backgrounds are here at Warwick, and like 3% are, you know, working class boys. And I don't think that's good enough, because there's a lot of people from those backgrounds that should be at Warwick and aren't, and are struggling whilst they're here as well.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Thanks for really good answers. Just because I'm conscious of time and we've got lots of candidates to get through, I'm going to make that the last question. So thank you both for providing such great speeches and answers, and sorry, Fatima, for not getting around to your question.
Thank you.
So thank you. So with that, we will move on to the Environment and Ethics Officer. So can I ask the candidates to just do their speeches in the order that they're on the screen, please? Is Asset here?
I don't think they are here, Lucy.
Okay. So do you want to do Hannah's speech then, and then we'll...
Yeah, so Hannah's submitted a speech in, so be sure to time me. Hi, I'm Hannah, she, her. I'm a GSD and Life Sciences student, and I'm running to be your next Environment and Ethics Officer. So why vote for me? Something that I think makes my strategy unique is that I am very keen to make sure that I represent your voice. That is why I will regularly reach out to students to share their ideas and concerns with me. As a female of white privilege, I know that I hold my own biases. And so if I get elected, I will create roles specifically for people of BAME, low income and LGBTQ+ backgrounds that are normally excluded from the environmental narrative at Warwick. People in these roles will be able to share their ideas with me and hold me to account. I have experience organising and leading discussions between students and people from estates to work on reducing waste on campus. This means I am aware of some of the barriers I might face and have already established a good working relationship with the estates team. I have also co-curated a play on environmental degradation here at Warwick and write my own blog on sustainability. In terms of what I want to achieve, the biggest thing for me is making sure that the university is on track to achieve its target of carbon neutrality by 2030. Ideally, we would see neutrality by 2025, but I am sure that in the past, the university has failed to achieve its climate targets and pushed them under the rug. We can't afford to let that happen again. So whilst I will make sure the uni doesn't slack off efforts, my priority will be to ensure that the university achieves carbon neutrality by 2030 at the latest. Alongside this, I will continue Esiosa and Kimia's work on pushing for fossil fuel divestment and keep up the conversation on climate colonialism. I will also demand more sustainable food, zero packaging waste, and more ethical suppliers of the cleaning products used on campus. Thank you for listening. I am sorry I cannot be there in person today, but if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Yas. Is Olivia Collins here to do their speech next?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hiya, yeah. Sorry.
So hi, I'm Olivia. Most people call me Liv. I'm running for Environment and Ethics Officer. My whole campaign is more about our university as a collective than me as an individual, but there are some particular strengths I know that I can bring to this role. I'm confident, organised and reliable, experienced in leadership, but still approachable and delighted to listen to ideas and suggestions from others. But most of all, I am persistent and committed. I care. And so I will work tirelessly to answer the questions about sustainability at Warwick that need answering. That is my plan as Environment and Ethics Officer at the Student Union, to increase transparency. We're all part of an institution of innovation, of research and discovery, and most important of all these things is communication. Sharing and discussing ideas, plans, and actions is what leads to progress together. That is why my campaign focuses on transparency. Easily accessible information and details about sustainability on campus. How much sustainable energy are we using? What materials are used in our buildings? Why aren't there more pollinator-friendly flowers on campus? What is Warwick doing other than setting goals to mitigate the climate crisis? I plan to get these questions debated and discussed with increased student and community input and involvement in sustainability at Warwick. Vote for me for a more transparent and sustainable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Is Taryn here to do their speech? I think we can take that as a no. And finally, is Wei-Jin here? No, okay. In that case, I've had 3 questions sent in from Kimia, one of our co-environment and ethics officers this year. I can see that Asos is here as well. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free to put their hand up and I will ask you once I've read out the questions that Kimia sent in. So obviously only one of our candidates are here. So Olivia, these are all directed for you. Just let me get them up. So firstly from Kimia, as the current Environment and Ethics Co-Officer, Asosa and I have fought very hard to have our divest motion passed and mandated by the union and are still in the process of doing so. We want to ask whether divesting from unethical companies and those complicit in BAE systems is a priority to you and what plans you have in your position as the Environment and Ethics Officer in 2021.
So yeah, I think that's a really interesting and important priority to have as Environment and Ethics Officer. And I think for me, what is most important is not just campaigning and lobbying for the removal of investments into unethical companies and unethical corporations, but it's about communicating with the student body about why that's important. I feel like there should be more discussion about this and more debate about it, rather than, I do not want in this role to just control what happens and then decide for myself. I want there to be a student forum, student discussion to see what students care about, which companies they think don't represent their needs and which they don't want associated with the institution that they're attending. And so for me, it's most important that in that process, student opinion and student needs are taken into account and considered in that process.
Great, thank you. Then next question from Kimia. As current Environment and Ethics Co-Officers, Asosa and I have also worked very hard to protect the Black and Brown students at this university and have confronted the reality that is the climate crisis and that this is disproportionately affecting the Global South. Climate change activists have commonly attempted to whitewash the climate crisis and treat it with either eco-fascist rhetoric or an all lives matter rhetoric that completely erases capitalism and colonialism and imperialism as ongoing causes for the climate crisis. What do you recognise as the causes for the climate crisis and how will you protect Black and Brown students' role?
So, in my opinion, with all of the information that I have, I think the causes to the climate crisis are firstly very complicated, but I think there is a massive historical and present attitude that the environment is expendable. And that's something that started hundreds of years ago. Many people argue that it started when the beginning of the Anthropocene, when humans or Europeans colonized America. And I think that as an English literature student, who is also a big part of the Decolonising the Curriculum group at the University of Warwick, recognising the impact of colonisation and the different impact that the climate crisis has on different individuals based on their background, based on their identities, is really important to me. And it's something that I spend a lot of time discussing with the Decolonising the Curriculum group and in my studies. And that is something that is particularly important to me going forward. And so drawing off of those student involvement and student inputs of how they feel it's impacted them, I would want to pressure the university to recognise that further rather than whitewashing, like the question says, the climate crisis.
Great, thank you. I can see Kimmy is actually here and has got her hand up. So Kimmy, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'll just ask like another question. Let me just quickly get it up. Yeah, so the student union has historically not addressed its institutional anti-Black and anti-Palestinian racism. What are your opinions about BDS, that's boycott, divestment and sanctions, and how will you stand up and work alongside Black student demands and Palestinian students? What did you also think about the occupation of the SU last year? How will you carry on representing those occupiers? And also, I'm not sure if I should ask this later on, but like, what liberation groups are you involved with or are you in contact with at the moment?
So I think firstly, I would say that as a first year, I approach all of these issues with very fresh and new to the university eyes. But I do think that it is incredibly important for everyone of all minorities to be represented in the cause for environment and ethics at the University of Warwick. And I personally would only be a representation for them, but I think it's important that those people have their voices themselves. I don't think that although the position exists, I feel like the position is to champion those voices, not to replace those voices. And so I would always push for those people to represent themselves and to provide platforms and situations in which they can represent themselves and in which they can pressure the university alongside me just as a representative. So because I cannot relate to people and truly represent the impact that the climate crisis has on them, as a white woman, I can represent my own experiences best.
Okay, we'll go to Luke next.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Liv. And yeah, thank you for answering the questions thus far. I was going to ask, obviously, when you're in the Environment and Ethics Officer role, you're in a kind of great position, a really privileged position to work with the university on kind of several university committees and such to try and enact change kind of through the university's governance structures. How will you kind of manage that side of the role, kind of working with the university to enact change whilst also simultaneously holding them to account and perhaps having to criticise them at times?
So something that I really want personally to see changed around campus is not me speaking for the university, but the university speaking for itself. I'm really interested in the university leading its own media campaign, in championing their own sustainability efforts. And so I certainly, although it's important to hold the university to account, would be working alongside it rather than against it, because me being a combative force would only push them further away from what I want and what I'm representing. And so I would really like to see easily accessible information about, there's so many construction projects happening on campus at the moment. What materials are they using? It would be so easy for the university themselves to put up posters or to put up social media posts about this sort of information. And it wouldn't be me subverting their sort of control or their sort of jurisdiction over the university. It would just be me advising them from a student's perspective on what to do, because I think it's more organic if those efforts actually come from within the university.
Thank you. We've got time for one last question, so I'll go to Isosa, I think.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up, Olivia, thank you so much for your speech and for coming to the hustings, first of all. I just wanted to pick up on what you're saying with regards to working with the university, or working alongside the university, and ask how then you will represent groups that the university has historically, not even historically, as recently as this year with regards to the Black students' demands, ignored, sidelined, marginalized, undercut, exploited, abused, etc., etc., and how you see yourself as representing those students in university spaces. I understand that obviously you can't represent, like what you were saying earlier, but as an officer, it's still important to represent marginalized groups on campus. And so how you will do that within the university space, working alongside the university, as you said yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I think my personal opinion is that organisations like the university, like so many other businesses, organisations, anything like that, often react negatively to being called out. And so I think constructively, it's important to mediate with the university, because although, like you say, the university has made mistakes and they have made bad decisions as well that weren't mistakes, they were conscious and they weren't considering all of the students' welfare. So going to them with this, representing these groups and representing what the students are saying that they want, and then going to the university, because although it has made bad decisions, they do have things in place in the university to hear student concerns. They do have things in departments as well as in admin to receive this sort of advice. And so I personally believe that although the university makes bad decisions, and it's definitely important to call them out when they happen, overall, to get the most constructive outcome, it's more important to align yourself with the organisation that you want to change for the wider community, rather than attack it head on, in my opinion.
Thank you, Olivia, for answering those questions. We'll make that the last one, I think, because we've got a few more positions to go through. And thank you very much for showing up as well. Very much appreciate it. Just a reminder to everybody as well that usually questions need to be directed to all candidates, not individual ones. But obviously I understand that because Olivia was the only candidate who actually showed up, that the questions were all directed back to her. Okay, let's move on to Women's Officer then. So could I invite the candidates please to do their speeches in the order that they appear on screen.
Can I mic test? Is this
yeah.
working? Yeah, okay, perfect. I think Iman is speaking first, so I just want to check that my mic is working.
Thank you.
Can you guys see me?
We can hear you, but not see you, I don't think.
Okay.
It might just be my computer lagging, don't worry.
Okay. The women of Warwick deserve to have space and to take up space. For too long, we have felt marginalised, left out, or straight up unsafe, especially on campus. Warwick has failed to create a safe and supportive space for women, with many feeling unsafe on campus. This is due to a toxic culture of sexual assault that has barely been addressed, with the uni assuming that lengthy emails in a single Moodle course is sufficient to stamp out ongoing sexual harassment. However, this fails to address underlying issues, including the intersections of women's identities and how this impacts their university experiences. That is why our policy priorities as women's officers, candidates, begins with the concept of intersectionality, because it is Warwick's failure to consider how different aspects of women's identities can fundamentally change our experiences. These experiences should be embedded in how the SU and the university approach issues on campus.
Thanks. This extends to taking an intersectional approach to sexual assault. With the report and support system staffed by only 4 white women, this is grossly under capacity for what is necessary. It is vital that this is expanded and that mandatory active bystander and sexual assault training is implemented for all students and SU staff. Materials must be created in collaboration with women and liberation societies on campus. Our priority is to make campus a welcoming and safe space for all self-identifying women, for example, by linking freshers to older years through an adopt a sister scheme. We will also continue to fight against period poverty in our community, as this is simply unacceptable. We will lobby the university to provide free sanitary products in university-owned buildings and gender-neutral toilets. We promise to hold the university accountable for all their failures in ensuring women's demands are seen and heard, because we deserve to take up space. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And could the next candidate go then, please? Is Lila here?
I did see the name. Yeah, I could see the name here in the group. I'm not sure if she's finding it difficult to unmute.
Can I just ask anybody who's not muted, please can you mute yourself just to stop feedback? Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the next candidate then and then come back to Lila if they can figure out technical problems.
I don't think they're loose.
Okay, is Nisha here then? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Nelly? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Then Sarah, finally.
Hi, is my mic working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Brilliant, yeah. Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm a first year maths student and I'm going to be running for Women's Officer. So the systems that Warwick has put in place to protect women have failed us. Schemes enacted to ensure we had access to sanitary products and healthcare essentials have been suspended or neglected. Claims of inclusivity and diversity seem to be a lie when barely over 1/5 of professors identify as women. Worse, there are weekly accounts of horrific incidents of sexual abuse or assault, pointing to a fundamental truth that we all seem to know. Rape culture is rampant at Warwick. It is time for the university to implement decisive reform. Preventing sexual assault requires more than just one Moodle at the start of the year. Interactive, termly courses are needed to ensure that a wide range of topics are covered. Anyone reported for sexual assault must attend a consent workshop. Further, a zero-tolerance stance on those found guilty needs to be in place. Abusers should no longer be able to get away with their actions, and harsh punishments must be handed out to those that are found guilty. Survivors must be safe in the knowledge that their abusers are not allowed at this university. The current systems are simply not good enough. If elected, I vow to work with the other minority officers to diversify both the contents of our courses and the staff that teach them. I will ensure that access to sanitary products is available to anyone that needs them, with full accessibility across the whole of campus. Most importantly, I will fight continuously and tirelessly against the causes of sexual assault and will ensure our systems of support are as effective and caring as possible. No longer will victims be told that abusers will remain on campus. No longer will the support systems be hidden at the bottom of SU emails, under FIFA tournaments and speed friending. A vote for me will ensure our voices are heard because women deserve better.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I've had a few questions sent in from Amara. but I think she's here to ask them. So go ahead.
Hi, can you hear and see me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, my camera will turn itself on eventually. Okay, so the first question is women. So the women's officer represents all women on campus, not just white women. So how will you, as a women's officer, ensure that you are representative to all women and non-white cis women on our campus?
Lucy, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think Lila might be able to do her speech now. So if Amara, I'm so sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that question again just afterwards. Sorry, Lucy, do you want to just try it and go again?
Yeah, sure. Lila, if you're here, please feel free to unmute yourself and do your speech.
Hi, I'm so sorry about that. My connection went.
Don't worry.
I'll start my speech now. Sorry. So I would like to represent the women of Warwick as their women officer, and I've pledged to listen to their demands and provide answers for them all. As a woman of colour, I would like to emphasise the issues that minority women face, both on campus and in their own lives. By fundraising and raising educational awareness on these issues, I will strive to create a more pleasant environment for these women and help them all achieve their dreams and aspirations. I vow to work alongside other societies at the university, such as It Happens Here and the wellbeing systems, including Report and Support, and help them to raise awareness of their different events and collaborate with them so that more students are able to access their resources. Working with these groups will ensure that students' welfare is kept intact and is prioritised by addressing issues such as body image and eating disorders, which are still matters at the forefront of many young women's minds. As an aspiring human rights barrister, I've always been a champion for equality and preventing sexism and racism, so this is what I would continue in this role. I started the sexual assault campaign by beginning a petition and writing a letter to the Students' Union. This went viral, and I then joined forces with other inspirational women to organise a protest which amassed hundreds of demonstrators, and the university took on several of my written demands. I see this as the start of great progress, and I was able to effect change despite not being in a position of power. If I was to gain more of a platform, I would create change and focus on the key issues, such as sticking to the zero tolerance for sexual assault on campus policy. Other important issues that I would like to advocate for include ending period poverty by providing sanitary products for all women on campus. I also pledge to raise more awareness regarding sex education issues, as I acknowledge the diversity of Warwick's international students and students in the UK coming from all different parts of the world and backgrounds, and as a result may not have received the same standard of education. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will consider voting for me.
Thank you very much, Lila.
Thank you.
I just have Amara to repeat the question, and then we'll go to the back to the candidate.
Thanks, Lucy. Oh, thanks for everyone for standing in all of your speeches. They were great, and thanks for showing up. I'm going to just do another question first, just so it's fair. So intersectionality is a commonly used term and is a buzzword that everyone throws in each year, and a lot of people don't know what it means. So please, can you all define intersectionality?
Okay, we'll go in reverse order for this. So Sarah, then Lila, then Iman and Naomi, please.
Yeah, of course. So to me, intersectionality is just being able to ensure that everyone's voices are heard. And I think it's also important for me to use it as a way to recognise my privilege, obviously as a white cis woman, to be able to go and see that I need to be more self-aware of the issues that non-white cis straight women face, and to ensure that we talk to everyone from all different backgrounds and hope that they all have a voice. And if I was a women's officer, it's important to ensure that the intersectionality is used to raise everyone up, and everyone's issues should be a priority. It should not just be my priorities. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Lila to go next, please. Also, please do correct me if I'm pronouncing anyone's name wrong.
No, it's fine. I'm Layla, but a lot of people call me Lila. It's fine. So yeah, intersectionality, the way I kind of know about it is kind of like this idea and understanding of like aspects of people's like social, and I think it's also political identity. So in regards to different genders and like race So I think that's my kind of definition on it.
Great, and then Iman and Naomi to go next, please.
Should I go first?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
first.
I mean, it is true, intersectionality has definitely become like a massive buzzword, but I think there's quite a risk with it becoming a buzzword is that people see it very much as like identity politics and kind of labels. But I think, like, personally, I see intersectionality as definitely, it's a lot more structural. It's kind of, it can be a lot more radical about seeing beyond representation, like what the different aspects of women's experiences are, and not just kind of what they are, but how they interact and what the dynamics are between them. And I guess also where you sit within those dynamics. So like Sarah said, like recognizing your own privilege, recognizing what voices you might not be listening to, and then recognizing where you need to do better in order to represent those voices. Because it's got to be a lot more than just like representational labels. It kind of has to be like how you start to view other women and other women's issues. Iman, I don't know if you want to add.
I think Naomi summed up intersectionality like perfectly, so yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think Amara had a couple more questions.
Thank you. So first question I asked, women's officer represents all women, not just white women. So how will you as women's officer ensure you're catering to more than just white women and also catering to non-white cis women as well on campus?
We'll go to Layla first for this one, and then Iman and Naomi, and then Sarah.
Hi. So I think there's quite a lot of great schemes that the university could get themselves into, because also I think as women's officer you have to really cater for like what life after university kind of entails for women. So like regarding like networking and things, and especially like as a minority woman myself, I want to go into law, so it's quite competitive, and there's actually not as many, like it's very still white dominated. So I think like with BAME schemes and things like that, that definitely needs to be amplified. But also I think as women's officer, you really need to work closely with like the LGBTQ community and kind of appeal to them, because as a woman, you can't just appeal to, you know, straight women. There's so much like involved now in our society, and you've got to kind of appeal to that. But also you can't just kind of appeal to one minority. It's got to be all women, because it's women's issues that you're focusing on. So I think definitely amplifying like ethnic minority voices, but also making sure that, you know, white women can understand that, and you can kind of build a unity to like understand like white privilege and things, or like ethnic minority problems like that. So I think you can do that through like educational events and resources. But yeah.
Great, thank you. And then Naomi and Iman to go next, please.
Yeah, I can go first. So for our campaign, we wanted intersectionality to be embedded in literally like all of our policies. And one of our policies is making sure that we're lobbying and campaigning against gendered Islamophobia on campus. So that's just one of the ways that we tackle the needs of all women. And also we want to be accountable to women on campus. So we want to ensure that they're easy, like it's easy for them to contact us for any of their needs and demands that we can't see, because we also recognize our limitations as just two people. We won't be able to on the first hand just, you know, recognize everyone's problems. So we want to like make it really easy for everyone to contact us, so these problems can be heard and discussed and like solved. So yeah, I don't know if Naomi wants to add anything into that.
Yeah, I think also, I guess, collaborating as much as possible with, say, the other part-time officers, with the Anti-Sexism Society, Anti-Racism Society, Sexpression, It Happens Here, as many different people that we can get involved in, for example, formulating training against sexual assault, or in making campus a safer space. Like Aman said, taking people's feedback, collaborating as much as we can, and yeah, just understanding our limitations and therefore trying to get past that.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Sarah.
Yeah, I think, like, obviously, as I said before, as a white cis straight woman, I can't understand or even begin to feel like how other women might feel that aren't like me. And so I think it's so important to reach out to women from all different backgrounds, to listen to them and to ensure that they have a platform, whether it be through me or whether that be with the other minority officers working together to ensure that all women are represented at the university level as a whole. So that includes university teaching staff, that includes university courses, and that just to ensure that if we can't get people to apply here and to increase the diversity, because that diversity is a good thing, if people don't feel welcome here. I think even I feel that as like a woman in STEM, like, it's so strange to be surrounded by all men, and I can only imagine how terrible it must be to be like an ethnic minority and to just see white women as the only form of representation of women. It needs to be that we include all women at all levels of the university to ensure that everyone feels comfortable and everyone feels safe. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think Amara had one more question.
Lucy, with your permission, can I ask further too, and then I'll be done. They'll be short, I promise.
Yeah, go.
Yay, thank you. Okay, so first answer the final two is, as Women's Officer, I found this year that I was working a lot with liberation societies, and naturally you will be working with liberation societies because women exist on several intersections. And so I was just wondering, as students currently, which liberation society events have you attended? Which liberation societies have you already currently formed relationships with? But please bear in mind, I am exec on almost all of them, so I will know if you're not telling the truth. Like, I go to all the events. So yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to remember which order I haven't done. Let's do Iman and Naomi, then Sarah, then Layla.
Yeah, so personally, I'm a member of WAS and WARSOC, and I've been to both events from both societies since Freshers Week.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I haven't been as involved in liberation societies as I should have been, but I am really, passionate about anti-racist and anti-sexist work, and I have in the past done campaigns about raising awareness about FGM, and I'm so excited to, finally get involved in these liberation societies and make an impact and make a change. So yeah.
Thank you, and then we'll go to Sarah.
Yeah, so kind of similar to Iman, I haven't really been involved with many societies on the whole because of probably COVID and the lack of in-person events. I will say though, like, I have always been like passionate about these issues, and it doesn't feel like that way, but a lot of like education and kind of discussions within like my own peer group, especially at university. Like just the other day, my flatmates found out that toxic masculinity was a real thing and stuff like that. Just making sure that everyone knows that everyone is educated, because at the end of the day, people that attend the liberation societies are not the people that need educating, it's the people that don't attend them, and it's important to ensure that our message of anti-sexism, anti-racism reaches the university as a whole, because otherwise we won't really achieve much. Yeah. Thank you.
Finally, Layla, please.
Hi. Yeah, so I've been I've worked with It Happens Here really closely on the sexual assault campaign. So Tasha, who is an exec on that board, has really helped me with kind of finding my way around the university, because I think as first years we weren't really told a lot about the societies whatsoever. So she really helped me and like read over like my letter and things like that. So I've been keeping really close tabs on them. But then I'm also part of UN Women because I think that's really important to me, and it's something that I'd like to get into in the future. But also TEDx Warwick, because one of my best friends is kind of like an exec on it, but they do some incredible women speakers, and we're really fortunate to have that. So yeah, it's quite nice to be a part of that too.
Great, thank you. I'll go to Amara again for her final question, and then we'll make Asma's question the final one.
Thank you. So your final question is, how will you tackle sexism and misogynoir when, and it will be a when it arises amongst SU officers, but also in the SU amongst staff as well?
Okay, we'll do back to original order, I think. So Sarah, then Layla, then Iman and Naomi, please.
Yeah, of course. I think with sexism, I don't necessarily encounter sexism in like the traditional sense of like, oh, we hate women every day. The kind of more nuanced versions of sexism I already deal with. I mean, all women deal with, obviously. I think it's very important that when taking up this role, I need to remember that I can't be afraid of upsetting men. I'm not doing this role to get further my career and put it on my CV. I'm doing it because I think there's issues on campus that the university has not appropriately tackled, and someone needs to be there that's willing to not shut up when asked to, not kind of back down when small little benefits are given in exchange for a massive request. It needs to be the case that I will fight them, and I will ensure that they do not let my voice be overpowered, and if necessary I will go over their heads, I guess. I think also there needs to be a level of kind of bureaucracy and recognizing that people have different views and you can't necessarily change everyone overnight. And so, I mean, it's, as women we're always told to turn like the other cheek and kind of let it happen, and whilst that isn't a good thing, I think it can sometimes be beneficial to, if it allows like the more important policies to be put in place. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Layla, next, please.
So I think if I got a sexist remark, I'm not the type to kind of react like really aggressively or anything, but I definitely think education's the way forward. So if they did say something like that, I'd just kind of make it clear, like, actually that's not really acceptable and this is kind of why. Because I think if you kind of educate someone or kind of explain it calmly, they're more likely to take it in. And obviously I recognise that sometimes people just think it's a joke or whatever. And I think, yeah, if you educated someone, because I've received like racist remarks quite a lot growing up. And so I think I'm kind of used to dealing with that. And it is unfortunately a question of like when this happens, because it is still really prominent in our society. And I mean, you've probably all experienced it, like from boy mates and whatever. So, and especially women in STEM, it's really horrible. So yeah, I think just kind of remaining calm, but also just saying, actually, this isn't acceptable and people do get offended and this is not okay, like in the workplace. So don't say it because we're friends type thing. But yeah.
Thank you. And then finally, Iman and Naomi.
Yeah, I guess the thing with like sexism, misogynoir, any sort of discrimination is like, it's very systemic. Like we can tell with sexual assault on campus, like sexism is not one time event. It's not just something that a guy says in your flat. Like it's definitely embedded in like the kind of rape culture, just like lad culture, even amongst women or like amongst many people, like sexism is just there. And I think for that reason, that like tackling it has to come very much systemically as well. So like no individual is going to be able to just end sexism on campus, but I think it's doing as much as you possibly can. Like, for example, with sexual assault training, being able to work with different liberation societies to, you know, distribute the Liberation Society's leaflet, to implement obligatory training. This has to be for the SU staff, for the students, obligatory for all. And in that way, you can start to try and get a culture shift, get people to realize that sexism is not something that can ever be tolerated, but it can't be tolerated at any levels, and it has to come, like, change has to really be quite systemic.
Also, just to add on to that, we're definitely willing to collaborate with the different SU officers, because we recognise that sexism can come in, like it ties in with intersectionality and the way that women with intersecting identities, they experience sexism and misogyny way differently than say a white woman would. And we think that dealing with this and collaborating with the SU officers will definitely help to tackle this issue.
Great, thanks. I think somebody might be unmuted. You will just make sure you're muted, please. Okay. Yeah, Asma, if you would like to ask your question, please.
Oh yeah. Is my mic working okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering, I'm curious about so obviously in the past with other officers and with other campaigns at Warwick, the university hasn't exactly been an ally to women, and they haven't responded very well to campaigns for change. And it is very likely that you will face a lot of resistance to a lot of the work that you want to do. We know that from the Ending the Period Poverty campaign that some officers have been trying to work on. So when you face this resistance from the university, do you have any strategy or skills that you think you have in place to kind of work around that, and how will you deal with these situations when it can get quite difficult and challenging?
Thank you. Just a quick note as well, we're going to make this the last question for Women's Officer, just because we need to have an access break after this, and then we've got sabbatical positions as well. So if I could ask Iman and Naomi to go first, then Layla, then Sarah.
Iman, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So with uni resistance, I mean, we've seen it all with period poverty, and even the way that they've been tackling sexual assault, it's not sufficient. We believe that if we're accountable to women and we're transparent with every single thing that we do, and we show the steps that we're taking towards reaching these goals, such as ending period poverty on campus, it will be really easy to kind of compare the things that we're doing versus what the uni is doing, and that will create an appetite for change all throughout campus, and it could lead to actual active change onto campus.
Yeah, I guess because obviously we're being very active with social media at the moment with online campaigning. I think it would be also continuing the online campaign, continuing either outreach through social media or outreach through, say, the newsletter, for example, the We Get Consent newsletter, keeping people up to date with, as Iman said, what we're doing. And therefore we can keep the student body up to date with what the uni is also not doing to help us. Because if you can publicly hold the university account, and if you can publicly get women angry about what the university is not doing, then that is a way to harness the collective power. Because if the uni just is showing resistance to what we're doing, but we know that it's right and we know that it's the best for women on campus, then we can't just accept them doing nothing. We have to really make it public.
Thank you. And then Layla to go next, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've experienced firsthand the university response, and obviously with my petition and everything, they were not very happy that I was starting a protest and things. But I definitely agree that you kind of do need to get people aware, because on these issues, it's not that one person just doesn't like it. There's this whole collective of people that just don't want this anymore, and no one wants to say anything. And so I think once one person stands up and is actually, okay guys, I'm going to do this, people really get on board with it. And that's kind of what I did with the petition. I started the petition, and then people were like, okay, actually I really agree with that, I've read through it and we're going to share it. And then once that happened, it got the university's attention, but it also got newspapers and things like that involved. And I think once students start speaking out, especially to newspapers and stuff like that, it really puts pressure on the university to act and respond. And we've kind of seen that as well from the rent strike, where it's been on the news and things like that. And so I think regarding, yeah, definitely women's issues, for example, period poverty, which I know is an ongoing campaign, unfortunately, I think there definitely needs to be a lot of applied pressure but also working alongside these liberation societies that really are, you know, experts kind of in these situations and have loads of resources regarding like sexual assault and all of those kind of issues. I think when you work together with that and with the other SU officers, the university kind of are forced to almost reply to you because there's a collective rather than just one person.
Great, thank you, Layla. And then finally, Sarah.
Yeah, I think similar to what the other girls were saying, like especially with what Layla did with the whole media campaign and Shame on You Warwick, it has shown how important the role of the media is in shaming the university into kind of submission and shaming the university into taking action. And I think as a women's officer, that will make the media and a women's officer speaking out and the women's officer taking making sure the university, whether that be on social media or through the media as a whole, making sure they're held accountable is so important, just to ensure, because the thing with the university legislation, they build in loopholes so that they can save face. The university has shown time and time again that they prioritize their reputation more than the safety of students on campus and the well-being of students on campus. So it's more important, if it will upset them going to the media and it will upset them to share with women on campus their feelings, but if it's necessary to ensure that good, effective change can occur, then I'm happy to do it. I'm not here to get re-elected next year. I'm here to ensure good change occurs. Yeah.
Great, thank you all of you for coming and answering questions and for giving such great speeches. We're going to take a quick access break now before we move on to the first two sabbatical positions, which are sports officer and education officer. So can I ask everybody to be back by 6:25, please? Thank you. Okay, it's 25 past, I think, so we'll make a start with our first two SAB positions of these question times. So our first one, as you can hopefully see on the screen, is Education Officer. I'm pretty sure all three of our candidates are here, so could I ask them to please do their speeches in the order that they are on the screen?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. I'm Agatha or Aggie, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a third year English literature student from London, and I'm standing to be your next education officer. I'm currently a Faculty of Arts rep, which involves sitting on numerous faculty committees, as well as attending student learning experience and engagement committee meetings, and I chaired our last Faculty Academic Representation Council. I'm also a third year course rep for the ECLS SSLC and vice president of Warwick Arts Society. So yeah, we need a student union that listens to our voice and does right by us. My top priorities involve more communication, liberation, accessibility, and pandemic support. If elected, my top 4 goals for the year are to put more money into our library and other services to fight hidden course costs, to work towards a more steady space and social areas, to fight for a liberated and accessible education for all students, and to develop course-specific strategies that ensure a high-quality education for each individual student. Some of my other targets include fighting for students on a national level in terms of student fees and rent rebates, and ensuring a safe return to campus as soon as possible. I also want to continue the Decolonise project, fight against the Black attainment gap and other forms of academic disparities amongst students, and making sure that as education officer, I am listening to students and supporting them, and especially supporting students in academic rep positions such as faculty reps and SSLC course reps. And if you like the sound of that, please check out my manifesto and my Facebook page. I'll try not to be too annoying on the freshers pages, and vote Aggie for education. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Isabel do her speech next?
Hello, my name is Isabel Atkins and I'm standing to be your next education officer. When I was elected Disabled Students Officer this time last year, the world was a very different place. The past year has taught me a lot personally about what I want to give back to my fellow students. I've spent this year as DSO working hard to mitigate the effects of COVID on disabled students, and it's embedded in me a desire to continue to fight the university on its abysmal record of accessibility and equity. I've lost track of the times I've had to say that's not what students need in university meetings to staff that are completely out of touch with student sentiment. This year has left students dissatisfied with their degrees, feeling lost in the university experience and unsafe on campus. Furthermore, it's left a lot of students feeling like they can't trust their SU. A student union isn't about high politics or solving the world's crises, it's about supporting the needs of the students it represents. For this reason, I was one of the most vocal opponents of the online teaching campaign that ran in September. I knew there were students I represented who would be left behind with online teaching. We weren't best positioned to fight their corners without hearing their stories. And that is my commitment right now, that I will listen and that I will continue my track record of standing up for what I believe in. We need to work within the current framework to reform the SU, not burn bridges between ourselves and the university. So what do I want to deliver this year? Well, I want to get students back in person ASAP. That means lobbying for a return to campus that takes into account the needs of all students, including those unable or unwilling to return, and mitigating for these effects. I'll get clear on mitigating circumstances procedures, reports delivered to all students held against transparent and objective criteria. I'll continue my work this year in rolling out mental health training to personal tutors and expanding this to all teaching staff. I'll get a promise from the university that wellbeing services will see no more cuts. And furthermore, I'll take what we've learned over the last year and improve upon it, finally delivering that comprehensive lecture cap policy that so many of my predecessors have sought. We need to learn from this pandemic to ensure higher education is accessible and equitable for all. And for that, you need an officer for all. So please vote Isabel for education.
Thank you, Isabel. Then finally, Joe, please.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So hi, I'm Joe Baird, pronouns he, him. I'm a third year history and politics student, the current social secretary of the Warwick Labour Society, and I'm running to be your education officer. I'm a big fan of The Simpsons, and I'm sure I can pretend to be interested in something you are to make me seem more relatable so I can get your vote. The university, particularly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, has failed to prioritise your academic well-being, preferring instead to prioritise rent-seeking and its supposed academic reputation. I believe that I am the right person to represent you as your education officer. I feel I have the right qualities for the role. I aim to be inclusive and empathetic towards others, and believe I have demonstrated this in my work as social secretary and in my personal life through my voluntary work. I also feel that I have the right ideas for the role at this uncertain time. Vote for me, and I will fight for an education that is liberated, decolonised and trans-inclusive. I will fight for an education that is of a higher standard, aiming to diversify assessment and increase access to more accessible study spaces. I will work for an education that accounts for your mental health by lobbying to maintain a number of self-certifications even after the pandemic has passed. I will lobby for an education that is free of unnecessary costs by supporting rent strikers and working to subvert hidden costs by, for example, providing free printing credits. And finally, I will aim for the swift reopening of the library whilst campaigning for a safety net, acknowledging that even when we return to campus, that alone will not make up for the damage done to our studies and well-being by this period of restricted access under lockdown. Vote Baird for education. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I've had a couple of questions pre-sent in. I can see that Kimia has got her hand up, so I'll let Kimia go first.
Hi, thank you all for speaking. I had 2 questions. As a student officer, I've experienced a lot of abuse in this union, including racism, sexism, and exploitation as a part-time officer. You are all white officers. How will you support your fellow co-officers and make sure you aren't perpetuating these systems of oppression in your interpersonal interactions? How are you aware of what you're upholding, and how will you make this a comfortable and safe space for those officers? Also, Larissa and Chloe have done amazing work as education officers. How will you recognise their legacies and carry on the work that Black women education officers have done before you, including like the Decolonise project? What are your actual plans for that? Thank you.
Thank you, Kimia. Let's go Isabel, Jo, then Agatha, please.
So on the first question, my thoughts on this, obviously I'm aware of the shall we say the hostilities this year and how the environment has been not conducive to productive and sustained discussion and representation for students. I think it's really important to take into account the views of the ethnic minorities officer, to the white participation officer, the women's officer, all of these groups that perhaps are being represented at a full-time officer and PTO level more broadly, to get their opinions on what needs to be changed and how the environment is working for them or not working for them, to make sure that our team as a whole, because it is a team, is as productive as possible and represents the needs of students as best it's able. And on the second question about the Decolonise project and Larissa and Chloe's legacy, I want to review the successes of the Decolonise project and work with departments to expand this. So looking to expand this into like the life sciences, more into STEM departments, and actually working to define staff members within departments working to find staff members in departments, because a lot of the time it just gets brushed off as this kind of really bold aspirational project the SU is running without real world ramifications, and some departments are quite hostile to it being incorporated. So actually defining members of staff to really push and hone this in on a departmental level.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Let's go to Jo next then, please.
So yeah, I would obviously look to prioritise the views of the ethnic minorities officer, the women's officer, the white participation officer, where they were concerned and when they had concerns. Obviously, I would not lead with. I would lead from the middle. I wouldn't take the lead. I would work alongside these people, and to make sure that their concerns were understood and made a priority, in any discussions or any committee meetings I was in where that was relevant. And as far as continuing the work of the decolonisation project, I'm looking forward to working closely with the ethnic minorities officer and the new Decolonise coordinator to ensure that it is implemented effectively.
Great, thank you. And And then finally, Agatha, please.
Yeah, I really think that's a great question. I think it's important to recognize that we are white. It's about educating ourselves on white privilege, on the experiences of minority students and how they're treated by the student union and the university. I think also calling out other microaggressions by white people and the racist behaviours that are propagated by the university and again with the SU. I would work with the other part-time officers and ensure that I'm not the main voice on issues that really aren't my experience. And for your second question, I think, yeah, the Decolonize Project has done some great work. I think it's important that people don't see it as just diversity in the curriculum, because I don't think that's enough. And I think that's sort of why STEM get away with sorry, I can't think of the words, but like STEM get away with not having decolonization of the curriculum to the extent that the other faculties do. And I think ensuring that minority students their voices are upheld, ensuring that it's about decolonization of the mind, of the educational pedagogy, and yeah, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Agatha. We've had lots of questions come in. I can see the hands up. So I'll work my way down the list, and I'm going to restrict answers now to a minute just to allow as many questions as we can get through. So Alice, please.
Hi, yeah, so part of the remit of the education officer is overseeing the academic representation and the SU's involvement in it. I was wondering what you thought of academic representation at Warwick as it stands, and how you feel that the SU can improve its support that it offers to course reps and faculty reps and really build up the communications between the SU and the students that are taking up these roles.
Thank you, Alice. Let's go Jo, then Agatha, then Isabel, please.
Try not to do that muted next time. Yeah, so I definitely think it's important that we increase academic representation. I think that the way forward is to sort of signpost these roles, make sure that people are aware they exist, make sure that people are encouraged to take part, to become faculty execs, to become, because I think at the moment it can potentially be seen, certainly in academic representation, I've always thought that a lot of people who go for, say, the SLC, they're just trying to CV build. I think it should be shown for what it really is, which is a way to work to improve departments and to improve communication between the Students' Union and the university.
Great, thank you. Then Agatha, to go next, please.
Yeah, so I am a faculty rep and I am a course rep. It's been a really hard year. I feel like the education officer needs to do so much more and be more visible, more present, communicate with faculty reps and course reps. I think we need more postgraduate representation because there just isn't enough. I think if the SU and the university want to continue with the departmental rep role, there needs to be way more investing time and effort into that, because it's honestly just not worked this year. And I think just more communication across the board would be the first step.
Great, and then finally Isabel, please.
So I think first of all, I'd really like to highlight the successes of the SSLCs. So advertise more what they've achieved for their individual courses and for their faculties as well. But as Agatha said, I think it's really important to provide additional support. So I would hold kind of bi-termly surgeries where I'd make myself available to not only faculty and SSLCs, but also to the wider student population to hear about the issues that they're having, and then represent these to the committees that I sit on as education officer, to ensure that there are multiple channels through which this feedback is being heard, and that this is being represented as a high level possible to affect as much change as possible.
Great, thank you, Isabel. I've been instructed by Yaz not to go to Luke, so could John Clark please ask your question?
Fund for the students most in need be better?
Sorry, I don't think we quite caught that. Okay, we'll go to Luke.
Hello, thank you. I was going to say, why aren't you going to me? Thanks, everyone. Yeah, no. So I was going to ask, pretend that we're in a year that's kind of not that we haven't had COVID. Well, the COVID's over, kind of what we're all hoping for soon. But what would you say is the kind of the one big challenge in the education space that Warwick needs to tackle in the long term, and how would you go about tackling that?
Thank you, Luke. We'll go back to the original order. So Agatha, Isabel, then Joe, please.
Hiya, yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with just the education system in general, not just at Warwick. I think the first steps would be targeting communication across with SSLCs and course reps, etc., and trying to actually understand the problems students are facing. I think there's really big departmental differences, and we need to try and dissect those first to actually make some progress and identify the best practices across the board that can be implemented.
Great, then Isabel, please.
So I think perhaps the biggest issue facing students is a lack of compassion from staff. I think that a lot of times that students are considered whiny or entitled, and I think this is probably a symptom of marketised education, where there's this attitude that students are just seeking what they're entitled to, as actually opposing to what they need. And I think this is symptomised itself as a disrapport between departments and students, and that the needs of students aren't being properly translated up into policy level. So yeah, I think there's just be more compassion and more open dialogue between the real student experiences, and I'll learn about these through this communication that I wish to facilitate.
Thank you, and then finally Joe.
So yeah, I think the idea about compassion is really, really important. I think that the university doesn't prioritise students' mental health enough. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles. I think, you know, we've had I know, bringing it back to the fact that COVID is a thing that we're all experiencing. I think, you know, we've had self-certifications now, but there's no reason they shouldn't have existed anyway. You know, people can't necessarily get a doctor's note if they're having a mental health crisis for the first time, or maybe they don't even know what's happening to them, but they just need the time to, you know, get that little deadline, get get the extension without any evidence. And particularly as well, this stuff needs to be applied cross department, because there are particular departments, again highlighted by COVID. I know I shouldn't be doing this, but highlighted by COVID, that are seem to think they can get away with not supporting their students. I'm thinking particularly STEM, and I know the physics department have been guilty of this.
Great, thank you, Joe. I think just because we're really tight on time, we've only got time for one more question. So I'm going to go to Naz, because I know that she sent in a question earlier that I haven't had a chance to read out.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question that I submitted. Thank you. So hello, I'm the current co-ethnic minorities officer, and it's good to hear that you all have ideas about what you want to do for the Decolonise project. But I wanted to hear more about what decolonisation means to you in the context of higher education.
Great, thank you. Let's do Isabel, Joe, then Agatha, please, for the order.
So decolonisation to me is making the stories of ethnic minorities heard, and oppressing the white voice, to ensure that there's an accurate representation of lived experiences in higher education. So not only liberating a curriculum, but facilitating upward mobility of Black and ethnic minority students to take on these future roles of professors and scholars who are making these materials, to ensure that their voices are heard and represented, and to further inspire these oppressed students, oppressed by the current system we're in.
Thank you. Then Joe, next, please.
Yeah, decolonisation means to me recentering what we study and how we study it around the historically marginalised. It's about critically understanding why we learn what we learn and who decided we should learn it. I mean, I go back to sort of my second year political theory from Hobbes module. You'd be forgiven for thinking that up until like 1950 there were only white political thinkers, and then all of a sudden Frantz Fanon emerged from the ether. It's important to challenge these ideas as well. People like Locke, who are sort of fundamental to like societies like the US and modern political theory were racist, had racist ideas in these theories that we teach, and he was a direct beneficiary of the slave trade. So basically going back, it's about recentering the voices of the marginalised.
Thank you, and then finally Agatha.
Yeah, so in terms of decolonisation at higher education, I think it's about making sure that each individual student goes through the process of decolonisation of the mind, because at the end of the day, every single student at Warwick, every single person in Britain and other countries affected by our colonial history have a colonial mindset, and it's about deconstructing that. I think classes about this can help. I think that the curriculum can do more to support us, and while diversity is so great, it's about the way we teach these things and making sure that minority students are upheld and their experiences. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. I think that's all we've got time for education, but just a quick reminder, if you didn't get the chance to ask your question because of time constraints, then feel free to contact any of the candidates online to get their specific answers to any questions you might have. So with that, we are going to move on to our final position of the night, which is sports officer. So please, can I invite the candidates to do their speeches in the orders that they appear on the screen?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hello everyone, my name is Vidithi and I'm running for sport this year, as you can probably tell. In the span of 3 months, I was lucky enough to be a part of the sport committee, which gave me insight into what sport is like at Warwick. I have also reached out to club presidents, not only to the most well-known and celebrated clubs, but also to the least known and clubs which I personally think deserve a lot more recognition because of the amount of effort they put into it. Doing so helped me curate my manifesto and address the core issues here at Warwick. To begin with, I want to initiate a welfare committee of all sport welfare exec who will formulate a no tolerance agreement signed by every member who joins Team Warwick, and to give clarity on what is and what is not acceptable in issues of discrimination of any kind. Secondly, to bridge the gap between Warwick Sport and the SU by giving clarity on whom to contact for what issue, having a complaint tracking system, and making it compulsory to notify presidents of booking changes 24 hours prior. The transition post-pandemic is going to be very crucial, and during this period, I would want to review the pre-booking systems, continuation of taster sessions, and regular check-in with club presidents. In terms of external matters, I really want to make Warwick Sport known and give clubs the recognition they deserve. I think that having a designated sports photographer would help cover major events such as Bucks and Varsity and give clubs the recognition they deserve. On a lighter note, I believe that everyone has the right to experience the joys of sport and never be put in a spot where they don't feel welcome or are excluded. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidithi. Could I ask Will to do their speech next, please?
Hi, can you see me all right?
Yeah.
So, hi, I'm Will, and I'm running to be your sports officer. I'm a 4th year and current president of the tennis club and prior social secretary. I worked closely with staff members from Warwick Sport and the SU for over 2 years, and I think I could make real change in this position. I'm running to get your voices heard and deal with the issues that you care about. My approach will be collaborative and democratic, but also efficient and decisive. A few of my key priorities are offering monthly meetings with presidents and execs so that their problems are prioritised. Continuing the work of the current review into club finances, as well as working tirelessly to promote the value of investment in sport to the university. Working with the DDO to gain access to vital finance meetings that no sports officer has been a part of for years, with the aim of tackling rising club pass fees. I want to use the collective power of the SU as well to negotiate large-scale sponsorship for all clubs. We must robustly respond to sexual violence, ensuring that execs are properly trained. Club correspondence frequently includes reference to the services available, and that all club code of conduct directly tackle the issue and establish clear disciplinary pathways. I want to work with liberation PTOs and societies to explore the idea of creating an ally system, which can provide support in accessing otherwise daunting activities as part of a commitment to make our clubs not just accepting, but inviting to all. The charity work every club did over lockdown was inspiring, and I think there is potential for clubs to work together to create an annual event that can have an even greater impact. I also have some great ideas on how to come back stronger than ever from COVID. Working with other university SUs for lobbying power, solving booking system problems, making physiotherapy available and accessible after the difficulties this year, and being proactive on creative solutions to ensure capacity isn't a barrier when everything starts to come back to normal. Please do check out my Facebook page and Instagram for more information, and I hope you'll vote for me come next week.
Great, thank you, Will. I can see that Charlotte is here to ask questions, our current sports officer, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Hi, I've got two questions, but people don't normally like to ask questions of sports, so I'll just go for it. The first one is, what do you understand to be the biggest issues within the sports partnership at the moment, and how would you propose to solve them? And yes, I'm asking for my own personal gain.
Okay, I'll flip the order around, so please can Will answer first.
So I think the biggest problem at the moment is purely communication and how we go about it. I think that there are a lot of problems in sport that really do on the surface look very simple to solve and appear to be very simple to solve. And I think that the reason that is because they actually are simple to solve and should be easy to solve. I think that we need to have a system where we can quite easily report problems. And I think that monthly meetings with presidents will help that, so that they can continue to come back to me and talk about like what has helped, what things I've done that has helped, what I've done that hasn't helped. As well, I think we need a tracking system so that we can have people from Warwick Sport and the SU who are working on the problem saying, you know, I've started working on this problem's underway, or this problem is close to being finished. And I think that it would be really helpful to presidents and execs just to know where they are at in dealing with problems, and just to really improve the lines of communication and working with what's come out of the recent review on all of that communication between the three pillars of sport, being the SU, Warwick Sport and all of the clubs.
Great, thank you, Will. And then Vidity to answer next, please.
Yeah, definitely. I think that communication is a key issue, but at the same time, I think unity as well. I feel like we need to work with Warwick Sport and not completely go against them, because we both need to benefit from each other at the end of the day. And I think that the way to take this approach is through an incremental process, starting to look at the most simple things, which is at least having to know whom to contact for what issue, and having a complaint tracking system, and making it compulsory to notify presidents of booking changes 24 hours prior. I think these are the most basic issues that need to be addressed. So.
Great, thank you. I think Charlotte had another question, so I'll let her ask that.
I do. Thanks. What do you think will be the biggest challenge facing students when we hopefully return to sport in term 1, and how do you propose to tackle this?
Okay, can I have Vidity to answer first, please, this time?
Yeah, okay. So I think transition post-pandemic is the main issue is going to be people to come forward and really take part in sports. So one of the ways I've figured that this would probably help is by initiating something called fan clubs, where you can meet people and just the simplest thing that you can talk about sport or even go play sport together. So you have people that you know are as big of a sport fanatic as you are, and just sort of build a community around each other to make everyone feel part of sport and make it much more inclusive. Yeah.
Great, thank you, and then Will.
So I personally think one of the biggest problems we're facing right now is something that execs and presidents had a problem with for a long time, and that's transport coming back. Because right now we haven't got a transport system in place. It was taken away from us during the pandemic, and that's fine because we don't need to go anywhere right now. But as soon as we come back, we've got nothing in place. There are a few ways that I can see of tackling this. The problem is that the university is saying that we can no longer hire cars, which most clubs have relied on for more or less all of their Bucks meetings, or even just trips. Like I know that climbing rely on it just purely for trips, and they don't even get the Bucks funding to cover it. So I think that we need to really take a look at transport and finding cheap transport. One of the ways that I think that we can do this is finding financial incentives for students to actually have their cars on campus and drive for clubs. One of the ways to do this would be paying like petrol money plus extra. Another way to do it, which I think potentially could work better because we need to incentivize them to actually have their car at university in the first place, is actually trying to get the university to provide them with free car parking spaces on campus for providing this service, should they continue to keep providing it to clubs. And I think that that could really, really help all clubs and make things a lot cheaper for them as well.
Great, thank you, both of you. I think we've got time for one more question. So, Leo, would you like to ask your question, please?
Hiya, my question will be, how do you propose to make sports more affordable for students?
Great, thank you. We'll go to Will first, please.
So I think the biggest problem for affordability in sport is the club pass right now. I think that the best way to tackle this, like's been previously said, we need to be working with Warwick Sport. Warwick Sport are constrained by the amount of money that they get from the university, and it's the university that we need to be tackling with on the issue of the rising club pass. Realistically, if you look at the numbers, the amount of money that the university is already putting into Warwick Sport, with just a negligible increase on that, the club pass could be reduced significantly. And I think that really working with the DDO to gain access to those financial meetings that the sports officer hasn't been invited to for over 2 years, we can actually then propose our motions to the university and show them how many extra costs there are to sport, because all they see is that I've been told repeatedly that, oh, it's only £4 a week, £3 a week. It's not like that at all, because all of the costs that they put on us, we then have to pay extra costs. I know in my club alone, like a member on team is probably looking to pay over £400 a year, which they don't really know about. And I think that we need to explain and bring a package forward from all presidents explaining the extra costs of sport, and really going to the university and saying that this is how much it costs us. If you invest more money in sport, you can make sport your unique selling point. You can sell sport a lot better and get a lot more people involved in sport, increasing the accessibility. And I think that saying that to university, going with that long-term goal of like this club pass shouldn't even exist, going really hardline, going for the furthest thing that you can ask for, we can negotiate down and find somewhere in the middle where we can certainly bring down club pass prices.
Great, thank you. And then Vidity next, please.
Yeah, I feel like the price part of it has been a long-standing issue, and I think that steps need to be taken to resolve that, to increase accessibility of people with great potential in sport. So the way I would potentially do this is by having a clear breakdown of costs. This would help tackle and give us a way of understanding where the money is going, how it's going, and what it's going. So that would potentially help direct things into ways, and of course working with DDO would get us access into financial meetings and probably make a way to fix these issues. So.
Great, thank you. I'm going to allow Isabel's question because Charlotte has just notified me that it's about something important. So Isabel, would you like to ask your question, please?
Pressure now to deliver. So one of our highest profile athletes is Carrie Denigan, who is a wheelchair athlete. But no, regardless, so many people don't know about disability sport on campus. How would you make sport more accessible to those disabilities and encourage clubs to incorporate athletes of all abilities and needs?
Very good question. Vidity, answer first, please.
Right, so I think that the new Warwick Sport Club, which we have, is definitely, it allows an inclusion of such disabilities, and this would possibly let us get them involved into sport as much as everyone else is. So I think that is essential, and I also feel that having the welfare committee would allow awareness into such sport and increasing the whole sport behind disability. So yeah.
Thank you, and then finally Will.
So I think that Charlotte has made some amazing strides in disability sport in these past 2 years, and I think that really now we do need to get that promotion out. And I think that one of the ways to do that is currently the sports committee is quite underutilized. It's there to represent all the clubs and get things out there. I think we can use them to help with training clubs, training execs to be able to cope with disability sports and how they can introduce it in their sport. As well, I know that often there are barriers to disability sport in terms of the equipment that you require. I think that my policies on sponsorship can link in there. I think that there's lots of big firms out there that would definitely want their names on investing in equipment for disability sport, and that if we can prepare a proposal to them on those topics, we can certainly get those things here and ready and available. And then after that, it really is purely just making sure that the exec have the training and the knowledge to run those sessions.
Great, thank you very much to both of you. That was some very, very good answers to some very good questions. That's it, I think. Thank you so much to everybody for coming and for every candidate who turned up for answering the questions so eloquently and thoroughly. Our next question time is tomorrow from 5 to 7, and we will be tackling the rest of the sabbatical officer positions. Just to say as well that voting opens next week on Monday at 12. So please make sure that you will vote in that. And I wanted to thank Yaz and Lindsay as well for helping me through this in the background through Facebook Messenger and various other things. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and it's been really insightful and interesting to hear from all the candidates.